Well, welcome everybody to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck. And that, of course, means some smart talk radio is in your future. In this segment, very pleased to have a name that you have certainly heard of before for sure in one level or another. James David Dave Power III, who founded J.D. Power and Associates in 1968. J.D. Power, of course, the well-known customer satisfaction company and survey company. They're really the voice of the customer since 1968. We call him Dave, but we'll also call him JD as well. He's traveled around the world, of course, presenting information and awards to the auto industry, CEOs, engineers, assembly line workers, et cetera, and reminding them all the time who they really work for, and that, of course, is ultimately the customer. He sold the business in 2005, but still is very, very busy, spending his time between the East and the West Coast. We're very happy to have him. J.D. Power, how are you, my friend?
Fine, thank you, Warner.
You know, guys in the research business tend to really care about other people. Share with our Lewis at Large listeners, if you would, what were you doing prior to founding the company in 1968, and what made you decide to go into this work?
Well, I worked my first job after getting my graduate degree was with Ford Motor Company. Then I went to General Motors, Buick and GMC division, and I tried to do a good job of reporting what the customer was saying, but I found that it was just a disaster. They would massage the data until it got up to the top management and told the top management what they wanted to hear. And so nothing really could get done. So I ended up leaving Detroit to get out of the automobile business and ended up in Southern California. And after a few years of working for other companies, I decided that I'd have to do it on my own in order to get the word back to top management of the companies. And that's how I started. And we started on the kitchen table. My wife agreed to get involved. We had 3 young kids and a fourth one on the way, and we did it all from our kitchen table and the living room floor, where the kids would fold the questionnaires and put them in the envelopes, put the stamp on, and would send it out in the mail. We'd get the returns. I had an office, and I'd get the returns there and take a batch of them home every night, and my wife would tabulate them while the children were taking their naps. And one night I got home, and she said to me, my wife said to me, Dave, there's a problem with the Mazda rotary engine. It's got an O-ring problem. And I said, what's an O-ring? And she says, I don't know, but look at this. And what we found is that the engine was leaking through an O-ring, and it was causing failure of the engine. And this was when Mazda had sold over 100,000 vehicles the first year in the United States and broke the record of any import. And I knew that we had found something wrong, and we sold the report to all the car companies that wanted to buy it for $1,800 in those days. And we had 14 manufacturers buy the study, and Mazda did not buy it. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. And so before we knew it, one of the car companies in Detroit released it to the Wall Street Journal, the findings, and within 48 hours after they reported it on the front page, we were in every newspaper and radio station in the world. And that was the first breakthrough that I had in doing an automotive study. And we did it from Los Angeles, California.
JD, I'm curious, back then, kind of twofold question here. In the world of consumer surveying, who was doing it at the time, if at all? Were they doing it on a national level? And back then, how much of your job when you started the company was selling the idea of listening to customers on feedback like this? How hard was that to do to these major companies?
Well, it was very difficult because prior to what we were doing, we owned the data. We would do the survey ourselves, so we owned it, and we wrote the report, and it was straightforward. And we wanted to get the straightforward information to top management. And this was very difficult to do because the market research departments control the business. You could only work for one company in an industry. So this kept control in the hands of the market research people. And that's why I had left Detroit. And this way we got around it because we owned the data, and then it was the press that released the information, and we started using press releases. That was my first press release, and it was the press that helped us get to top management. But it took 30 years to really break through. There was a lot of resistance.
You're talking specifically about the auto industry here, but as you look across the American business landscape back then, was the auto industry necessarily did they have more of a tin ear to the consumer than maybe some of the consumer staples like Procter & Gamble, some of those, or was it just American industry in general felt that if they put a product out there and advertised it would sell?
Well, I think it was more a prevalent. You mentioned Procter & Gamble. They did their own market research, and for them, they had instant feedback from AC Nielsen on the product movement, so they had more information. In the United States, the automobile industry did not have a lot of independent feedback as to what was going on. So they were pretty much smug in what was going on. It was only when the Japanese came into the market, Toyota especially, and started taking big chunks of market share that they began to understand that there's something going on. So we followed that trend throughout. And Toyota was my first automotive customer.
If you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio. Good segment going here. Talking to J.D. Power, the founder of J.D. Power & Associates in 1968. You know them extremely well. They are the number one gatherer of information about you, the consumer, and the J.D. Power Awards, of course, well-known and a mark of quality for companies across the country. J.D., just in general, is it reasonable to assume that American enterprise listens more closely today to the customer than they did when you started?
Oh, absolutely. And what we really, the reason I have written this book is to give the consumers a lot of credit and a better understanding of how they are in charge now of the development of any product or service today. They are in control, and for the first time, we see them exerting this control. And it was them filling out our questionnaires in a lot of other industries as well, or services, and we were delighted with the feedback we would get. With the returning questionnaire, we would get around 10% would send additional information on their problems. With the automobile, for instance, they'd send us photographs of the faded paint or the way the trunk lid was leaking when it rained. And those types of information that we got back, we would forward on to the respective manufacturers. And some of them began to use it very early on, but others resisted it. But today, I would say that the quality of the vehicles has improved 400% better than it was. And you cannot go wrong now with all the car companies that are still in business in the United States. The quality is very close to perfect, and I think that the consumers have driven that. And when we use the information and get it back to the manufacturers, they now listen to what is going on and will make improvements.
Well, you have a brand new book out called Power, How J.D. Power III Became the Auto Industry's Advisor, Confessor, and Eyewitness to History. The road that your career took and that the company took was extraordinary. It was unique. It was blazing a trail. My gosh, after 40-some years, where in the world, where do you begin with a book about what J.D. Power was all about?
Well, I kept my records. I had 60 file boxes of information. I kept all my correspondence, all my contact information, and so forth over the years. And I tried to start the book, and I had so much information, I had to have somebody come in, and the editor of the book, Sarah Morgans, did a marvelous job of assessing what the major points we had to have to make it a readable book. And I'm just delighted with the results. And the feedback has been tremendous.
When you were doing this, was this a labor of love, or was it a bunch of work, or you're sort of charting new? I know you're not an author at heart, but I know you wanted to tell the story. Tell us about that. Did you ever feel like, gosh darn it, this isn't worth it, or was it easy to do?
It was easy to. It wasn't easy to do. It was difficult to do, but it was a passion that I had because I knew that top management was not getting the information they needed to make the products better, serving their customers, and it was a challenge, and I worked at it, and not only myself but our whole staff. We grew from the kitchen table to 850 people by 2005. And did I say 250?
Yeah.
I meant 850 people. So it was very just a challenge for all of us.
You know, as the brand became better known, as the company became better known, was there a desire on your part to really expand this business worldwide and to all kinds of other industries, or did you really feel like you wanted to stay as closely focused to the auto industry as possible?
Well, I wanted to stay close to the auto industry, but we started getting information from various other industries and services. The airline industry asked me to start covering them. And then we went into banking and into healthcare. And one thing led to another. The hotels. So all of them wanted that kind of information to help them understand their customers better. And so that's how we grew.
J.D., and again, if you just joined us again, you're listening to Lewis at Large, Warner Lewis from the Flight Deck here. We're talking to J.D. Power, the founder of J.D. Power & Associates, the customer satisfaction survey, the brand that you know extremely well. We're talking about a new work called Power, how J.D. Power III became the auto industry's advisor, confessor, and eyewitness to history. I'm curious, did you do any surveying for what would be considered maybe suppliers of these companies? For example, you may have been doing surveys for GM with their end users, the actual purchasers and drivers of their cars, but did you do any surveys, let's say, for example, for say Goodyear and their industrial clients that would buy things, or was it all end consumer-based surveying?
Oh, no. We did a lot of supplier giving them information. They might have a product that fit in 5 different models, different manufacturers, and we did surveys on that to help them out. We did surveys on the financing of automobiles, and that was, I think, another area that we really changed the game, where the financing was much more service-oriented.
What about, and again, we're talking about, in particular, the auto industry here, but more importantly, I think, the work that J.D. Power did and how it changed the landscape of how, I believe, American companies think about their customer. And I'm curious, with that as sort of a lens, is there if you had to give one piece of advice to help a company understand or achieve a fairly high level of customer satisfaction, is there an overriding lesson or headline that would encompass all industries?
Well, I think what we try to emphasize is integrity and a feeling that you really want to address your specific customers or potential customers as a company, and we would zero in on those people and ask them for feedback. And we, in doing the surveys, most of them were via mail at that time, we were able to hone our understanding of what was bothering people. An example of this would be in the automobile industry again. We found that once they got the drivetrain fixed, there were other things that popped up. For instance, when you get the engine and transmission operating very well, you would find that other things started bothering the customer, like wind noise. And so that became uppermost in the minds of the customers. And so we had to shift and would use this prior survey to help us arrange the questions that we asked so that it would cover what the customer at that time was most interested in terms of quality. So we would, it was a growing thing. And today even, we can see that the customers have a lot of different things bothering them. When you start putting touch screens in the vehicle, the older people are upset with the vehicle because they can't operate it the way they used to.
Right.
And so we have a good example of that is the Lincoln vehicles were too complicated for the older buyers, and they went back and checked it out. They wanted the knobs on the radio that they could easily handle even when they were driving without having to look down and touch this or touch that. And so they have modified their vehicles to better meet the needs of the customer. And what we see happening is that as you answer the expectations of those customers, there'll be new things that come up. And it's a continual improvement process that you have to go through. If you satisfy the customers, then their expectations go even higher, and you have to meet those. So it's a continuing process.
Right. If you raise the bar, that bar remains raised, at least in their eyes. I'm curious as to, over the years, you've seen extraordinary changes in how companies and their ability to deliver information, deliver brand messages, etc. In this age of internet shopping and the ability and the blogs and the review sites and all the other kind of information, good or bad, that the consumer has at their disposal prior to a purchase, does that change their expectations of a company?
Oh, it does. It's a continual increase in expectations, and it's very difficult for companies to maintain the status quo. They have to be ahead of it and flexible and listening to what the customer wants. And what we talk about is that the customer is in charge today, whether it be a banking relationship or a restaurant. They expect more than they used to just a year ago. And so you have to have the companies understand this and get all of their employees understanding it and realizing that the customer is in charge.
Well, as we start to wind down here, again, we could talk about this for a long time. Customer satisfaction, company perceptions of companies, always a fascinating subject. But I do agree with you. There's no question that the consumer is dramatically much more in charge, whether they know it or not. But as we kind of wind down here, kind of leave us with maybe a headline, in your opinion, J.D., as you look back on your career, you look back on what the company did, J.D. Power and Associates did to change the landscape. Is there a life lesson here, or is there a lesson that all companies can learn, and frankly, our listeners, consumers, can learn about their relationship with the companies they do business with?
Well, they aren't going to last very long unless they do understand that the customer is in charge now, and it's going to be an unending situation where they have to be one step ahead of the customer, and they have to have their whole workforce understanding that as well. And it's not an easy thing to come by, but the customer is in charge, and with the the Internet and all of the spin-offs of ways of getting information, the customer is smarter than the server at a restaurant, and you just can't go through the steps of trying to train people to do it. You got to get them into the real feeling of what needs to be done, and we see this happen so many times. The restaurant could have a system, and they come back. They have a separate server delivered to the table, and then the waitress or the waiter comes back in about 2 or 3 minutes and asks, "Is everything okay?" Well, if you're just going through the steps, that's one thing. But they have to have a genuine belief that what they're doing is making a difference. And motivation of those people is very difficult for any company to deal with. And it's something that has to be dealt with, though.
Well, it is a fascinating subject, the world of the consumer, what goes through their mind, what they like, what they don't like, and why they like it and why they don't, all encapsulated in a fascinating history of the J.D. Power & Associates Company. I've been speaking to J.D. Power III. The work is called Power. It is published by Fenwick Press and actually Fenwick Publishing. J.D., I assume people can get a copy of this pretty much any bookstore or online at Amazon, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, Amazon is ready to go.
Well, listen, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And as we go forward, obviously, I think you would want to remind our listeners that, hey, they've got a lot of power in the power of that wallet and their satisfaction that the companies are, in fact, listening to them.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate the chance to tell more of the public of what we're trying to do.
You bet. Hey, listen, thanks again, and have a great 2014.
Thank you.
You bet. We will be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.